Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers 2 was released late in the NES's life cycle in January of 1994. This puts the game in the final 12 games released for the console. Due to this late release, this makes the game one of the more rare and expensive titles on the NES. The game was developed and published by Capcom, and the original game's producer, Tokuro Fujiwara, makes a return for this game. The game is a follow-up to the 1990s Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers and has similar gameplay with a few tweaks. The game's plot is basically what you'd expect from a Rescue Rangers game. Fat Cat is causing chaos around the city, and it's up to the Rescue Rangers to stop him. Between each level, the game features cutscenes with a little bit of dialogue explaining why you're going into each level. The same fast-paced gameplay from the original returns in the sequel. Your movement is quick and precise, and this gives the series a really great feel. Your primary attack is done by throwing objects, which are usually boxes. The throwing mechanic has been modified from the original game, now allowing you to charge up a throw by running before throwing. The charge shot allows you to take out enemies that require more than one hit much more quickly than the standard throw. The charge ability also allows you to take out bosses more quickly, and when playing two-player, you can actually use the other players as a projectile by doing this. In addition to the charge shot, you're also able to throw objects diagonally, which is the only way to beat one of the bosses. Rescue Rangers 2 does away with the map system that the original game had. For the most part, the levels are all linear, with 3 levels before the last that are selectable. You aren't able to skip any levels like in the original game, but the game is so short you probably wouldn't want to anyways. Playing the game casually, it shouldn't be hard for most people to beat the entire game in less than 40 minutes. For the most part, the difficulty of Rescue Rangers 2 is about the same as the original. It's pretty easy for an NES game. Boss fights have been changed from the original as well in this game, removing the bouncing red ball, which was a staple from the original. Here there's 3 types of boss fights. The most common one you'll get is your projectiles are from the boss's attack. He'll attack you and leave something for you to pick up on the ground. A few other bosses will have boxes that appear from above as you play through the boss fight. The final boss type, and the final boss, is where you have to throw time bombs, which only damages the boss when it explodes. The biggest problem that this game runs into is the environments just aren't as cool as the original game. The original game had a really great sense of scale where everything looked massive compared to you. This game, however, lacks that on most of the levels. The only real level that I got that feeling in was the first one, which was a diner-looking level. The poor environment design detracts from the game's graphics, however the sprites are as good as ever. Many of the bosses, while smaller than the bosses in the original game, look more detailed. The game mostly has the same quality as the original, although having been released 4 years after the original, you'd expect some upgrades that just aren't there. The game's soundtrack is seriously lacking compared to the original, or most other Capcom games in general. Most of the tracks are upbeat and fine, they just aren't as awesome as many Capcom NES titles. Only one track from the game's soundtrack stood out to me as memorable and really good, while the rest are mostly average. According to PriceCharting.com, Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers 2 is currently worth a little shy of $180. The price has skyrocketed for a copy in the last year, making the game almost completely unattainable for most without emulation. Truthfully, the game isn't worth the massive price. If I saw it for $60 or less, I'd say that's reasonable, but at nearly $200, it just isn't worth it. Overall, Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers 2 is an okay sequel to the original, but in many ways it falls flat. The environments are less interesting and the music is lacking. The fast-paced gameplay remains the same, which is nice, and if you love the original, it's worth trying it just to experience some new levels, but for the most part, in almost every way, the sequel is nowhere near as good as the original. Not to say that this game is bad, it's actually pretty good, it's just the game had big shoes to fill, and it fell short attempting to do so.